Okay, answering questions following up from our Advanced Reserve Concepts webinar, get to a section about reserve study preparation. So first one, who decides on conducting a reserve study and which firm to hire? Well, it's the board of directors. Sometimes the board of directors counseled by the management company. A management company usually has good experience with a wider range of experience than the actual board sitting there. You may hire a reserve study firm every year, every few years, but a management company, they're hiring reserve study, getting reserve studies performed all the time throughout the year for the entire portfolio of properties that they manage. So who decides? It's ultimately the board. The board makes a decision which firm to hire. Obviously, we'd love you to hire Association Reserves, but our counsel on that matter is look for a reserve professional, someone who has a credential in the field, an RS or a PRA. They're roughly equivalent. They're national credentials saying that this person has the right background of information, the right background of experience, and commitment to uphold the national standard calculations. And so you're going to get a reputable product if you get a reserve study done by a RS or a PRA. I'm a RS. There's some firms that have more PRAs. They're roughly equivalent. They only differ in the continuing education criteria. But look for a credible reserve study, and that again is someone with an RS or PRA. How detailed does a reserve study need to be? Does it need to cover all of an association's assets? Well, it should. The assets appearing in your reserve study are those that would otherwise destabilize your budget. You need to be prepared, or you should be prepared, for the major predictable projects at the association. The board is chartered with the responsibility to maintain, protect, and enhance the common area assets. And so these large projects take years of financial preparation. So yes, you should cover all the appropriate components. And that's the national standard 4-part test. It needs to be a common area maintenance responsibility, life limited, with a predictable remaining useful life, and above a minimum threshold cost of significance. Now, I wonder if this was perhaps a Florida client, because in Florida they have a short list of 3 mandatory components: painting, roofing, and roadway surfaces. And there's some associations that think that, well, if that's all the state requires, it's good enough for me. The answer is no, because what about your elevator? What about your boiler? What about the rec room remodel? It's going to be $50,000. Get a good, credible reserve study prepared by someone who knows what they're doing, and that will have anywhere from 20 to 200 or whatever the number is for your association. It'll have all the right components listed. So again, so you can have success at your association. We don't want you being surprised by expenses that should not be surprising. How do you determine replacement cost estimates and useful life of major items? Well, it's our experience. We deal with clients all day, every day. We see actual expenses. We see life cycles. We see life cycle trends. We've seen paint cycles go down as the dangerous chemicals in paint are fewer and fewer. So we see that, we get that experience from our own client base. How often do you need to get a reserve study? If our association doesn't have a lot of reserve components, would every 5 years be okay? Well, let me throw that question back to you. How much do you hate a special assessment? A good combination of best practice is getting a with-site visit update every 3rd year, augmented by a no-site visit in the in-between years. So have a with-site visit reserve study, no-site visit, no-site visit, with-site visit reserve study. That's a good cost-effective combination, preventing you losing track of where you are financially, keeping your eye on the ball financially, and minimizing special assessments. So best practice is getting a reserve study updated based on a site inspection every 3rd year. And best practice in addition to that is getting it tweaked in the years in between. The no-site visit update is a very inexpensive option. Can we add components to the reserve study that are currently missing? Absolutely yes. Every opportunity is that we touch a reserve study, we try to make it better. We may find something that we didn't think was going to be life limited, and it turns out, oh gee, it is life limited. Or the association may change landscapers, and the old landscaper maintained the trees. The new landscaper doesn't maintain the trees. So now you have to add tree trimming to the reserve component list. Things like that. So there's always an opportunity to add components. And do we need a special assess to catch up for that item? Generally, no. They're generally not huge expenses. They're generally things that you can just tweak the reserve contributions up a little bit and to keep the balance in reserves strong enough to manage the cash flow. Good question here. Do we have to replace a reserve component that has a 0-year remaining useful life, even if it's not ready to be replaced? No. We have, I'm not sure if we showed it in the webinar, but there's 5 different categories of reserve expenses. There's things that range from inconsequential, that could be things like the water heater in the pool bathroom building. No big deal. If that water heater fails and you can't wash your hands with hot water, that's not a critical problem. So you can just go and get that replaced after it fails. Now, let's talk about a boiler, a single boiler that's in a mid-rise apartment building, or not an apartment building, but mid-rise apartment style, where you have one boiler for 50 homes. That's exactly what you want to replace preemptively, because you don't want to get into a situation where the boiler fails on a Friday night and all of a sudden you got a week without hot water for 50 angry people. So it goes all the way from inconsequential to significant and emergency type situations. And emergency isn't necessarily life or limb. It can be just 50 angry people. So you make different decisions about go or wait depending on what the component actually is. Why do you use 30 years for the funding plan? Wouldn't the numbers be more accurate using 10 years? Absolutely. Numbers are more accurate in the first 5 years where we can see things closely. The numbers get a little fuzzier the further out we go. National Reserve Study standards say that the minimum standard is that the reserve study needs to incorporate 20 years of income and expenses. So that's the baseline. California law says that we have to incorporate anything in the reserve study that is within 30 years. So you'll see different companies having 20 years or 30 years worth of projected expenses. And my answer is that it may be a little fuzzy 15 or 18 years out or 25 years out, but you're beginning to plan for it. And as that project draws closer and closer, it gets sharper. And by golly, you've been preparing for all those years as it gets sharper, drawing closer into focus. And that helps an association be well prepared when it does get down to the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 timeframe. You talked about costs associated with delaying a project. Yes, talked about how deferred maintenance is often very expensive, significantly expensive. Okay, but how about the depreciation in value of the item? Doesn't that offset the cost? You're mixing the accounting value versus the cost of the item. So let's talk about a boiler at an association. You may be able to sneak by with an extra year on that, hoping that it doesn't go out on a Friday night of a holiday weekend. There's no depreciation in value of significance. It's still running, it's still making hot water. You're just at risk of being uncomfortable for a few days. What I want to encourage you to think is there's some major mechanical components that you might want to do preemptively. You could proactively, because the major mechanical components nowadays are more cost efficient, more energy efficient. And so replacing an elevator or HVAC system early may actually be in your best interest. You may be saving a lot of electricity by replacing it early. So there's a number of factors involved, but generally the average project gets to be more of a headache when you delay it. You get into a deferred maintenance situation.